Good afternoon, friends. Welcome again to this daily current affairs, decoding emerging current issues of the 7th December 2021. Okay, so in this session, we will discuss again very important issues regarding challenges to the Indian constitutional democracy. Second will be regarding the tackling malnutrition in India, and third will be the Nutri Millet revolution, and last will be the digital lending. And to download PDF, you can join the Telegram channel of Aakar. You can subscribe the channel and share and like the videos also. Okay, let's try to understand firstly the challenges to the democratic polity of the India, the constitutional democracy of India. The Constitution of the India has laid the foundation of the parliamentary democracy, and democracy is based on the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Okay, the institutional mechanism of a democracy involves a political party system, independent judiciary, parliament, and executive. The executive is responsible to the parliament. Okay, and the universal adult franchise, etc. So context is that on December 9 and 10, the US president will host a virtual summit for a democracy, which will bring together the leaders of the 100 countries, civil society, private sector representatives, to set for an affirmative agenda for a democratic renewal, and to tackle the greatest threats faced by the democracies today through the collective action. Okay, now, in this context, let us try to understand the serious challenges faced by the Indian democracy. Okay, of the many challenges, we will understand very few and very serious challenges which has been raised in the today's issues in the Hindu. Okay, and also some of the other serious issues also, which we'll try to understand. So first challenge that our democracy faces is the institutional weakening. Democracy is not just a value based system. It requires a strong, robust institutions for the protection, for safeguarding the human rights, for safeguarding the fundamental rights, freedoms given to the citizens by the constitution. It requires a transparent and accountable institutions. It requires dynamic institutions which can fulfill the aspirations of the people. So in this context, institutional weakening is a very serious challenge which is faced by our Indian democracy. And the very much first challenge of the institutional weakening, which we see as parliament is in session, and we have discussed the issue in very detailed also, is regarding the decline of parliament and state legislatures. I have taken this issue in a detailed detailed perspective, and have talked about the quantitative and the qualitative decline in the functioning of the parliament, and which also applies to the state legislature also. This decline of parliament has its own consequences for a democracy, because it weakens the role of the parliament to express the opinion, to express the view of the people, to resolve the issues of the people, to make a policy on the issues which are being faced by the people, to also to enforce accountability of the executive, so that executive will not be able to misuse its power. But because of this decline of the parliament, the role of the parliament is declining, and uh, we don't see that much dynamism in the functioning of the parliament, which is necessary for the functioning of the democracy, especially the parliamentary democracy. The next institution that is weak, that is becoming weak, is executive, which faces the problem of vested interest, the political party interest, and the various regional interest, sectional interest, casteism. All these vested interest is there in the functioning of the executive, which we generally see as the government. Then there are corruption, and the issues like a lack of coordination, working in the isolation. There is cooperation between the departments of the government, between the ministries working in the isolation, a lack of accountability mechanism, all these problems, faced by this executive. The next important challenge which is being faced by democracy is regarding the institution of a judiciary. Independent judiciary is very important for the healthy democracy, but our judiciary faces some of the very serious challenges. The first of it is the burden of the pending cases. Judiciary is having this problem of a lot of cases which are pending, which goes in lakhs. Okay. As far as data is concerned, as of August 2019, there are over 3.5 crore cases pending across the Supreme Court, high courts, and subordinate courts. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has impacted virtually every aspect of the socio-economic as well as political setup in India, has quite obviously judiciary hasn't been immune to it. Means judiciary's functioning is also affected by this pandemic, and by and large courts have not worked with a full caseload since March 2020 because of the lockdown which was imposed. Okay. What has happened because of this? As a result, when the lockdown of the March was declared, there were 3.68 crore cases across all levels now, which have already shot up to the 4.42 crore. So again, burden of the pending cases has risen, which is a cause of concern, and it leads to the it becomes very difficult in this case when the lot of cases are pending to prioritize cases, to select cases which are important, and especially in that case constitutional cases remains pending. Okay, so in that context, judicial delays becomes a persistent problem, has remained a persistent problem. Important cases pertaining to the constitution, state power, fundamental rights, elections, citizenship, these are all pending before the Supreme Court. And some of these very important cases which are pending before the Supreme Court due to the judicial delays and reluctance of the judiciary to entertain them is constitutional challenges to the Citizenship Amendment Act, which is related to your problem of citizenship, how you define citizenship, how you perceive citizenship. Okay. Then the next important law which is being pending before Supreme Court is much criticized section 43D(5) of the UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, which makes grant of a bail ineffective. It has been criticized by a lot of section for having a negative impact on the fundamental rights. Only last week, Human Right Office, the United Nations Human Right Office, it criticized India for arrest of these rights activities in the Kashmir, and there is also criticism of the increasing use of the UAPA to suppress the work of the human rights defenders, journalists, and other critics in Jammu and Kashmir and other parts of India. So these are the controversial issues which often come into the international light also. And thirdly, the constitutional challenge to the electoral bond scheme is still pending, which is very important issue for the free and fair election. This electoral bond has authorized the limitless and anonymous corporate donations to the political parties. But criticism is that it is making the political process opaque and which is favoring the party in the power. So these issues are still pending in the Supreme Court, which are of importance to the constitutional democracy, to various questions regarding fundamental rights, citizenship, limits of the state power. All these issues are still pending, and which is a cause of the concern, and it affects the health of a democracy. The next important challenge for institutional weakness is our regulatory body, investigating bodies, and other executive bodies faces a lot of problems regarding the lack of accountability mechanism, lack of transparency in the procedures for the recruitment, appointments, where the executive holds the power, where holds its where executive becomes a exercises veto powers many times and holds a lot of power in the appointment. So these weaknesses in the regulatory and investigating and other executive bodies is a major cause of the institutional weaknesses faced by the democracy. And very very clear example of these are two institutions, bureaucracy and CBI. Bureaucracy faces intense politicization. Similarly, CBI also faces the intense politicization, which means the political parties interference in the functioning of these institutions, and a corruption, casteism leading to the partisan behavior of the bureaucrats. It also leads to demoralization, the frequent transfers. All these problems are faced by the bureaucrats. CBI, much politicized body, it has been criticized as an instrument in the hands of the political party in the power. You know how the CBI has been used in India by one party against the other. And also Supreme Court has also criticized this Central Bureau of Investigation as a caged parrot, which only works under the under the political master, which is a ruling political party. Okay, so institutional weakening is an important serious challenge to the democracy. Within that, we see decline of parliament, executive, judiciary, and regulatory bodies, investigating bodies, and other executive bodies which are weakening and having a serious impacts on the functioning of the democracy. The next important challenge that has been raised today is the centralized federal polity. Issues regarding centralized federal polity has come into the light. Again, already our constitution has been framed in such a way that a lot of power, a greater power and responsibilities has been given to the central government. And this power and responsibilities to the central government as compared to the state governments, its purpose is that central government can exercise its greater power and responsibilities to maintain unity and integrity in India, to keep the federal union intact, and to keep the federal structure intact. Okay, so these are the purposes for which the powers and responsibilities, the distribution of this power and responsibilities is asymmetric, and it is biased in favor of central government. However, what has happened is that when we see the functioning, when they see the functional dynamics of this federal polity, we see a lot of misuse of the political power by the central government, which has impacted central state relations and overall federal balance in the India. A case in a point, is a misuse of the Article 356, which empowers central government to impose a presidential rule in the state and take into its hand all the powers, legislative, executive powers of the state into the central government's hand. Okay, but this misuse has been because the ruling party at the central wants to topple the state governments, want to remove the government of the other party at the state level. And Article 356 has been misused more than 125 times. And in almost all the cases, it was used for the political considerations rather than any genuine breakdown of a constitutional machinery in the state. So you can understand how the power asymmetry in the federal polity is causing a problem for our federalism, which is actually impacting the democracy, the federal democracy in India. Okay, regarding that federal polity, the recent controversy has been due to this Article 370, which is being removed by the presidential order of August 2019. It has diluted Article 370 of the Indian Constitution and bifurcated the state of the Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories controlled by the center. There is no doubt there is a favorable opinion for that. There are criticism against it also. But as far as constitutional question is concerned, it raises some of the serious questions. What are these? it raises the question of whether the center can take the advantage of Article 356 situation in a state. That is, when state government has been toppled and under Article 356, state comes under the central government's jurisdiction. At that time, when no elected government and assembly is in existence in the state, then can center make a permanent and irreversible changes or alterations in the very structure of the state itself? Okay, the answer will have important implications not just for Jammu and Kashmir but for the entire federal structure. For example, means what it means is that when you have Article 356 imposed in a state, and during which entire state is under the control of the central government, then is it possible for the center, or is the power given to the central government under such circumstances, under such situation, to make a permanent and irreversible changes in the structure of the state itself? That means whether parliament or whether the central government can use its power and to end the existence of the state itself. For example, it has done in case of Article 370, which has been diluted, and state of the Jammu and Kashmir has been has been converted into union territory. Okay, so the related question is that under Article 356, can central government make such a permanent changes in the structure of the state itself? Okay, so the second related case question is the question of whether under the constitution union legislature has the authority not simply to alter the state boundaries, which is a power given under Article 3 of the constitution. Okay, so can union legislature has the union legislature authority not simply to alter the state boundaries but degrade a state into union territory itself, something that has never been done before August 5, 2019. So can central government do it? Okay, and if it turned out that the union legislature does have this power to convert state into the union territory, like in Jammu and Kashmir, okay, it would essentially mean that India's federal structure is entirely at the mercy of the parliament, that is central governments, if the ruling party is in majority, and parliament could then constitutionally convert India from a union of states to the union territory if it so wanted. Needless to say, this as well, it would signal a hugely significant shift in the power to the center. Though politically or practically it seems impossible, but it poses this constitutional question whether the union government can do permanent changes when Article 356 is is under implementation, and secondly, under Article 3, can it convert state into union territory? So even at least in the theoretical sense, this raises the questions because of the conversion, because of the transformation of the state into the union territory. So it raises the questions on the power of the union legislature as well as its intention, and what remedy a federal democracy can have in the case when the union legislature surpasses its authority or use its power to do this. Okay, so these two important serious challenges we discussed. First is institutional weakening, and within that, judiciary's delay in settling the certain important questions related to state power, accountability, citizenship, fundamental rights, and second is about your federal democracy, and within that, the centralized federal polity, and what can be the implications if union government decides to use its power under the extreme circumstances. Okay, so consequence is that while the legislature and state do not have much cost, while they do restrict the individual constitutional guarantee rights, but if this happens, individual suffers, And a constitution is entirely ineffective if right violating status quo is allowed to exist, and it's perpetrated for months or even years, because if the cases are pending in the Supreme Court for years or for months, then constitution virtually becomes ineffective in protecting and safeguarding the fundamental rights and constitutional rights of the citizens. Okay, so what is solution is that we need to settle the important questions pertaining to the accountability, transparency, and citizenship. So for that purpose, you need a strong institutional framework and political processes that can address many of these questions. So you need a strong judiciary. You need to resolve many challenging problems faced by the judiciary, like manpower, technological penetration, vacancies, then resolving the pending cases as soon as possible, then settling the constitutional issues through the larger benches, etc. So these are the some of the important questions that are being discussed in today's paper. Okay, the next issue we will understand is regarding the tackling malnutrition. Okay, the question of malnutrition, you have in syllabus for GS2 paper a question, issues regarding the poverty and hunger. Within that you can understand this question of tackling malnutrition. The context is that in 2015 and 16, the 38.4% of the children below 5 years were stunted and 35.7% were underweight. Recently, National Family Health Survey 5 data is released. This malnutrition indicators like stunting and underweight has improved. Like stunted children's proportion has reduced to 35.5%, and underweight children proportion has reduced to 32.1%. And it is only marginally improved. Actually, this concern is that it has only marginally improved, but there is improvement. And childhood anemia has worsened is a cause of concern. Now, to tackle malnutrition, Government of India has taken number of measures. Important measures is Poshan Abhiyan, PM Poshan, which is a new name given to the midday meal scheme. Then a public distribution scheme is there. Pradhan Mantri this Kalyan Anna Yojana. Okay, and this MG Narega. Okay, so these are the very important schemes implemented by Government of India. And this Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana is very important for ensuring the food security, ensuring the malnutrition concerns in the times of a pandemic. Okay, but while we design policies and while we implement them, there has been a persistent problem regarding the policy design. It is said that the policies are made from the top and imposed on the bottom. That is, there is a top-down approach, because at some higher level, at some higher authority level, the policies are being made, but actual needs of the people, the actual situation on the ground level is not taken into account. So there is a top down model. ऊपर से schemes आ जाती है और वो वैसे के वैसे implement करो ऐसे बोला जाता है. Okay, and in addition to that, in addition to the top down model, there are also problems regarding in policies. You don't have a system, you don't have a mechanism for monitoring that scheme on a regular basis. So in today's issue of malnutrition and regarding the measures which we have taken, the lack of robust monitoring system at every level is there as a major challenge. And some reforms has been suggested as far as this robust monitoring system is considered. Okay, so we will try to understand these reforms that have been suggested. Okay, the first thing regarding this robust monitoring mechanism is that after monitoring a successful initiation of the breastfeeding, this ASHA workers, auxiliary nurse midwives, and even Anganwadi workers, they must continue to monitor the exclusive breastfeeding till the infant is 6 months old. So monitoring should not be, just monitoring should not be till only initiation of the breastfeeding, but it should continue. Monitoring should be on a continuous basis, and ASHA workers and other auxiliary nurse midwives should continue it for 6 months till the infant is 6 months old. Okay. Then in addition to that, monitoring initiative, monitoring the initiative of the complementary feeding. When infant becomes 6 months old, and when there is the change to this complementary feeding, in addition to the breastfeeding, then there should be a monitoring of this also. Then home take ration for under 3 years through the Anganwadi workers. Anganwadi workers play a very important role in the early childhood care and nutrition. So home take ration for under 3 years through the Anganwadi workers, and monitoring of it should be there. Then monitoring of the Anganwadi center itself. Okay, so there should be a monitoring of its functioning, supervision, supply of quality rations to the Anganwadi centers. There should be web-based monitoring of the Anganwadi centers, and data should be there there with the central government. There should be community participation also. So in this way, a robust monitoring system can help government to implement schemes effectively. Then monitoring PDS, public distribution system, except in a few states where web-based portals are functioning, there are no monitoring of the PDS in other states, very little monitoring or no monitoring. And there is a focus on paddy and wheat which satisfy hunger and not nutrition. Then a lack of monitoring has led this issue, because when you don't monitor, you don't get a feedback and the problem persists. Okay, so lastly, the independent evaluation, social audits, community participation in monitoring and implementation of the government scheme is very important. So this robust monitoring mechanism is must for every policy at all levels. Okay, every policy at all levels. And this robust monitoring monitoring of the policies which we have understood in the context of malnutrition should be there in the context of all other developmental schemes, so that policies becomes more effective on the ground level, so that people participate in its implementation, so that policies can be implemented more transparently, and the outcome which we get are on the expected lines. So what we can say is that in the context of these government schemes for the development of the people, the policy design must be reformed, and robust monitoring system, robust accountability mechanisms, then coordination and convergence, all should be incorporated in the policy itself, so that it can happen, so that it can be implemented effectively. Okay. Next issue is regarding the Nutri-Millet revolution. There are talks, there are renewed emphasis on this Nutri-Millets like Jawar, Bajra, Sorghum, Ragi. Okay, and this renewed emphasis is again in the context of the issue which we just discussed, which is a malnutrition, because a paddy and wheat which have received excessive attention, it's important for hunger, but not completely for a nutrition. So Nutri-Millets, its emphasis on the Nutri-Millet has become a new focus of the government to address the question of the malnutrition, as well as there are many other questions also, like crop distortion, for which Nutri-Millet revolution is important. Let's understand this question. Okay, the context is that multi-pronged health issues such as obesity, undernutrition. To address this question, the UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, passed a resolution which is being sponsored by India and supported by more than 70 countries, declaring 2023 as the International Year of Millets. Okay, let's try to understand what are the importance of the nutri cereals or Nutri-Millets. Now, millets grow well in a dry zones as a rain-fed crops. under marginal conditions of a soil fertility and moisture are stable yielders. So they can be helpful for small and marginal farmers. They are climate resilient, require lesser water. They are hardy crops, can tolerate drought also, and offer income security to the small and marginal farmers. These are essential climate resilient staple food crops grown in the dryland agriculture, that has occupied 68% of the area under cultivation and produced 44% of the food requirements in India. So India's agriculture being monsoon dependent, dryland agriculture important is a lot, and for that nutri millet is important crop. Okay, then cultivating millets requires less water, as I already told you, than rice, sugarcane, and wheat, and will be suitable for small farmers, and it will have a positive impact on the ecology also, because rice, this sugarcane, wheat not only requires large proportion of water, but also fertilizers also. So soil degradation, land degradation, groundwater exploitation has become a cause of concern. And also millets are high in dietary fiber and powerhouse of nutrients, and many times they can be used as a fodder also for animals. So millets are of use. They are having multiple uses, and their benefits to the farmers in a multiple ways, as well as to the food and nutritional security of the population. Now, what is the current scenario? And the current scenario is regarding the problem of crop distortion, which is happening, and the declining trend of consumption of this nutri millets, because of the changing consumption behavior of the population, which is moving towards fast food, junk food. Okay, India has a varied climatic, soil, socioeconomic conditions that support diverse crops. So you can grow diverse crops, but what is happening is that over the years, some crops have gained, which are paddy, wheat, sugarcane, and other commercial crops. They have gained more dominance, leading to some serious changes in the cropping pattern, which we call as a crop distortion. So since Green Revolution, we have discussed this, focus has shifted to crops like rice and wheat in many states like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and many other states also in eastern India, southern India has tried to replicate this pattern of the crop. Okay, Green Revolution has increased the production of this crop manifold, no doubt about it. Also, minimum support prices for rice and wheat and sugarcane have increased disproportionately over the years. As a result, farmers have started replacing the pulses, core cereals, which we call it the nutri cereals like jowar and bajra, with rice and wheat and sugarcane crops. So you can take the clear example of Haryana, where the condition is suitable for growing nutri millets, where condition is suitable for growing pulses, but due to this benefits of the minimum support prices and Green Revolution, which increases production, the farmers have shifted to the unfavorable crops of wheat and rice, which is leading to some unfavorable outcomes like groundwater exploitation, reducing the soil fertility and then productivity. Okay, paddy, cotton, sugarcane, soybean cover more than half of the total sown area, taking over the area traditionally devoted to millets, oilseeds, pulses, which are more suited to the local climate and soil conditions. So this commercial considerations has led to somewhat a serious change in the cropping pattern. Okay, as far as millets are concerned, India is the largest consumer and accounts for 38% of the global demand. And analysis show that the millets area under production has a negative 2.25% compounded annual growth rate between 2000 and 2019. So you can understand importance given to other rather than millets. And production CAGR is only 0.08%. So production compounded annual growth rate is also low. The institutions like ICRISAT, ICR, ISAT, it has reported in its one of its report that between 1962 and 2010, India's per capita consumption of millets has gone down significantly from 32.9 kg to 4.2 kg per year. So you can understand how the consumption pattern in India is changing because of the fast foods, junk foods, rice, paddy, and ready-made foods. And the millets which are more suitable for addressing malnutrition, for giving people energy and nutrition, has its consumption has reduced. But with a renewed focus, the government has taken some of the important steps, which is firstly is a rebranding. In order to improve millets, its production and consumption, India has on its part notified these climate resilient crops as a nutri cereals. So instead of saying them as a core cereals, we are saying them as a we are naming them as a nutri cereals. There has been increase in the minimum support prices. Ministry of the Agriculture is running a 600 crore scheme to increase the area production and yield of the nutri cereals. The government is encouraging farmers to align their local cropping pattern to India's 127 agroclimatic zones, so that favorable crops like millets can be grown in the local area. Seed kits and inputs to the farmers are being distributed. The government included cereals in the targeted public distribution system under the submission Nutri Cereals in 2018. So despite all these measures, scalable intervention in the millet production and processing and cross-border trade is yet to be observed. So what is necessary, what is important intervention in the millet production for its overall growth and development is still lacking. Okay. Let us try to understand what is the way ahead. What are the various suggestions given by the expert? Experts are saying a bottom-up approach is very important, and for which an action plan, a comprehensive action plans needs to be formulated to map the millet value chain. Okay, so map the millets value chain, which involves take into account production, processing, distribution, consumption, cross-border trades with the functions of agencies and actors involved in the value chain. So map the whole value chain first of all. Okay, what will it involve? It will involve classifying agroclimatic zones first of all for millet cultivation. So you need to classify agroclimatic zones कि कौन से climatic zones millet के लिए favorable है, and following an awareness, interest, evaluation, trial approach means you have to first create awareness, you have to then develop interest in among the farmers, and then you have to evaluate also. So and this trial approach should be there to promote millet adoption and production and rendering support activities to value creation. प्रोडक्शन के साथ साथ उसका वैल्यू क्रिएशन भी होना चाहिए. ओके, देन टेक्नोलॉजी पेनिट्रेशन. सो एग्रीकल्चरल टेक्नोलॉजी एप्लीकेशन रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूशन लाइक केवीकेस, कृषि विज्ञान केंद्र, ICAR, they can invest in the capacity building of the small farmers through the field demonstration. The ministry concerned like agricultural ministry of the food processing can promote a participatory millet farming, drawing best practices from some of the states like Odisha, Chhattisgarh and Karnataka. Okay, agri-tech farms can be roped in to disseminate the recommended practices to micro entrepreneurs and farming communities. Okay, then Agriculture and Processed Food Products Export Development Authority, APIDA, under the Ministry of the Commerce, it plays a very important role in the export of the agricultural products. So it can incentivize the commercial cultivation of the millets also, and such as one district, one product, or a cluster farming for a trade promotion. And then it can promote the exports of the millets to the whole world. Because as now United Nations itself is recognizing the importance of the millets. So India can play a leading role in the exports of these millets. A comprehensive study can help understand the market segments, so consumer preferences, export competitiveness. So market कौन से available है, कौन सी opportunities available है, consumer preferences कैसे बदले जा सकते हैं, traditional food के favor में export competitiveness कैसे बढ़ाया जा जा सकता है. Value added products such as ready to eat products are important to boost millets in the urban areas. So ready made foods which actually which can replace your junk foods in urban areas. These some of the measures are very important in order to have a successful nutri millet revolution, which is very important at this point of time, because India faces a lot of problem regarding the nutritional security. Okay, the last issue today is regarding the regulating digital lending. Okay, new technological startups are coming. Financial technology में startups का अभी entry हो चुका है. New small technological firms are coming, which are offering multiple services like digital lending and other financial services. So recently, last year in during this time in Hyderabad and Bengaluru, the cases of unauthorized digital lending apps came, and they pose a problem to the loan defaulters, and harass them when they could not return their loans. Okay, so due to this, what happened, when some of the people borrowed from these digital lending apps, and when they could not repay it, this app started to harass them, and also it led to the suicide of some of the people. And after that only the Telangana people began registering the criminal cases against these apps. Okay, now what is the problem with this digital lending? So the first, they are charging a exorbitant rate of interest, a huge rate of interest. It has been alleged that this Chinese promoted mobile applications were actually finance technology companies who had linkages, who had tied up with the local NBFCs, non-banking finance companies, to increase their business and book a huge profit by charging this large interest rate of interest. So when the people are not getting loans from the banks, or when they don't have a good credit history, they try to get the loans from this unauthorized digital apps. But these digital apps run by these financial technology companies, they don't have a transparent functioning. They don't have accountability. They are out of the regulatory framework, and they engage in many malpractices. Their recovery executives harass and defame the defaulting borrowers. So by sending fake notices to all members in the contact list of the victims, they charge a very large processing fees for each loan. Then regulatory framework के बाहर थे वो, तो किसी का ध्यान भी नहीं गया है. And as a measure to address this question, RBI constituted in January 2021 a 6-member working group under the chair of an executive director to evaluate the digital lending activities and assess the penetration and standards of the outsourced digital lending activities, identify risks posed by unregulated digital lending to the financial activity, and it gives some recommendations which are very important as far as the regulatory framework for this newly emerging digital apps and financial technology companies are concerned, which are engaged in a multiple financial services activities. So first recommendation is formation of this digita. Okay, the formation of this digita with a view to making lending apps more transparent, unbiased, and devoid of restrictive practices, to make their function transparent. Report क्या suggestion देता है? The report puts the customer at the heart and recommends setting up an independent body which is called as a digita, Digital India Trust Agency. उसका काम क्या होगा? Whose primary task would be to audit all lending apps. Audit means, first of all, you assess them, okay, before they are hosted on a digital lending platforms. So before they start their operations, auditing is important, assessing is important, and for that Digital India Trust Agency is recommended by this committee of the RBI. This body could ultimately prove to be a Bureau of Indian Standards for a digital lending ecosystem. जो Bureau of Indian Standards energy sector में काम करता है, वो financial sector में digita करेगा. No. Second important recommendation is RBI must post all the approved digital lending apps on its website. जैसे banks को वो अपने website में दिखाती है कौन सी regulated banks है, वैसे ही digital lending apps और जो companies है, it should be RBI should post all approved these lending apps on its website. The way it disseminates the names of the licensed entities under its ambit, जो भी banks वगैरह होते हैं जिनको लाइसेंस मिला होता है उनका नाम वेबसाइट में रहता है, उसी तरह से इस लेंडिंग एप्स को भी दिखाया जाए वेबसाइट में. एंड आस्क द एप्स टू गिव बैकवर्ड लिंक टू RBI वेबसाइट ऑन देयर ऐप for prospective customers to check, so that customers can get the information. Thirdly, to strengthen the consumer protection, report advocates National Financial Consumer Protection Regulation under the existing Consumer Protection Act. So this National Financial Consumer Protection, ये financial sector में consumers को protection देगा. Lastly, it exhorts, it tells non-centralized regulators and authorities जो भी काम कर रहे हैं इस sector में, digital lending के sector में, RBI is, the committee wants them to frame the appropriate guidelines which is in line with the RBI guidelines, so that they can create a enabling and minimize the environment of regulatory arbitrage in the business of a digital lending. So ऐसा environment हमको create करना है जहाँ पे ये फाइनेंशियल टेक्नोलॉजी कंपनीज और डिजिटल एप्स काम कर सके और कंज्यूमर का भी प्रोटेक्शन हो सके. The report draws upon the experience of regulators in important jurisdictions and intends to protect the consumer interests and ensure fair markets, encouraging emerging technologies and businesses to flourish. So for this purpose, that is perhaps the reason why the report has limited digital lending only to regulated entities. तो इन सब चीजों को ध्यान में रखते हुए कंज्यूमर प्रोटेक्शन एक हो गया, फेयर मार्केट दूसरा हो गया, फिर इमर्जिंग टेक्नोलॉजीज को हमको एनकरेज भी करना है. सो इसके लिए सबसे पहले तो इनिशियली कुछ रेगुलेटेड एंटिटीज ही होगी जिनको डिजिटल लेंडिंग अप्लाई होगा. सो लिमिटिंग डिजिटल लेंडिंग ओनली टू द रेगुलेटेड एंटिटीज फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, so that from step by step we can improve the regulation and functioning of these apps and companies. It's now time that these unauthorized and sometimes engaging in malpractices, so this unregulated companies and apps should come into the regulatory framework now, which is very important because it is our financial landscape is changing. So it's very important now also to keep our regulatory framework updated. Okay, so this was some of the important issues today. You can like and share the video, and also please comment and which videos you want, which issues you want. Okay, take care, goodbye.